You don't have a soul tie. You have an attachment. A soul tie is often something that people refer to when they're simply suggesting that there's a part of them that's always with the other person and there's a part of the other person that's always with them. Now, this comes from coupling, being connected emotionally at deep levels, mentally, and even sexually and physically, which often is a big role when it comes to soul ties, right? Because in sex, it's not just bodily fluids that are being transferred. There is some spiritual components that are happening in the midst of experiencing sex. And so, even though that somebody could be experiencing a legitimate soul tie, oftentimes it is a process of decoupling and grieving the loss of the relationship, not just emotionally and mentally, but also physically, and what was available compared to what is no longer available in order to move forward. But when people say soul tie, they're oftentimes again saying there's a part of me that will always be with them. There's a part of them that will always be with me, and I will never be able to fully move forward from them. Now, when we get to these types of languages, this is actually where I would argue with you that it is not a soul tie. You're actually wrestling with an attachment. Because one of the things that is constant in being attached to somebody is often being quick to use terms like always and never. And attachments to people is oftentimes what keeps you from acknowledging the reality of who this person is in efforts of continuing to hold on to who you hope they can be or who you wish they were in your fantasized mind. Well, you can't be talking to me because this whole relationship that I've been grieving over for the last 10, 15, 5, 6, 7 years is legitimate soul tie. What else could it be? Because I just can't get over them. And it's just been stuck in my heart and in my mind. Let me give you something that I think might challenge you a little bit. You see, when you move into a new apartment or a new house, transitioning from one place to another, typically in that process of moving day or moving out and moving into a new location is when you have to turn in the keys to the house or space you're moving out of. Why do you have to turn in your keys? Of course, I'll gladly answer. Well, it's part of it is actually because, well, the next owners of the lease that you're leaving are going to need those keys to enter into the new space that you're leaving. But you know what also makes that make more sense is because, to simply put it, you don't have access. You decided to not re up on the lease, perhaps even break the lease. And so, because this is no longer an agreement, you no longer have the same access and ease of access to the same crib that you're now moving out of. And so, your keys are necessary to turn in. Let's take this a step forward. Let's just say you didn't turn in the keys. What do you think the landlord is going to do as a result of the keys not being turned in? Outside of maybe a return fund that's deducted, I think if I'm the landlord, I'm probably going to change the locks. And I'm going to change the locks because it is further proof of evidence that the previous homeowners or those who rented such a space no longer have access. And it is important that as new people look around this space and perhaps look to purchase it, they are assured that previous homeowners do not get the opportunity to have the same access to this house, to this apartment, to this space like they once did because they're no longer on the lease. A lot of you have been so quick to call previous relationships soul ties, not even knowing that you're giving the keys to people who have chosen to walk out of your life and break their lease with you. And what's crazy is because we have just used terms like always and never, we have literally put the power in the hands of other people, having control over us mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually, because we've constantly convinced ourselves that we will never get over them and this will always be like this, when in reality, we're just legitimately attached. And proof of it is because we have yet to accept the relationship for what it is, the results of the relationship for what it is, in efforts of continuing to hold on to what we hoped it would be, holding on to the fantasized version of the person that we hoped they could have become, and not acknowledging the reality of what is. I just have to tell you that if you really want to have healthy relationships moving forward, it is important that when somebody chooses to break their lease with you, that they no longer have the same access to you as they did when you were connected in agreement to such an extent. And let's just say that they don't return the keys. And maybe returning the keys is in the picture of needing closure. Maybe the return of keys is you getting back all the stuff that maybe you gave to them. Maybe returning the keys is in the format of you getting closure, you getting the answer as to why they no longer want you and why the relationship is no longer standing. I need you to be willing to change the locks. And by changing the locks, I just simply mean this in reference to you changing or realigning yourself and your values. I need you to get into a space where you're willing to acknowledge what is, accept the reality of the relationship for what it is, and be willing to make a different decision, setting boundaries in place, standing on those boundaries, and realigning yourself with your values. So somebody who has chosen to walk out of your life no longer gets to turn on and turn off the light switches, no longer gets to play with the keyhole, but they are no longer available for the same level of access. And you're standing 10 toes down honoring such a decision. Even though I had this whole vision of who I wanted them to be, this is just not what it is. Accepting that so we can actually move forward and embrace the next move that we're making. Because if we don't, we will find ourselves continuing to give the keys, i.e., the power, i.e., the control, to people who are choosing to break their lease from us and walk out of our lives oh so slowly. When truth is, we just need to actually learn to be at peace with the decision that was made, love with an open hand, which also makes room for people to choose and walk away, and give ourselves the closure by acknowledging the relationship for what it is, accepting it for what it is, so we can embrace what's ahead moving forward. I hope this made sense. If it did, I want you to type "caught it" in the comment section below and follow for more as we continue navigating relationships and doing relationships the right way, which starts with us doing healing work on ourselves first, which sometimes means instead of using popular trends and titles and labels on relationships that we've endured, it's up to us to be honest about what the situation is, be honest about who the person is, and be honest about the reality of the relationship itself. So that way we can come to a place of greater acceptance and being able to move forward instead of continuing to find a way to give the keys to people who should no longer have access because they've chosen to break the lease with us.